Okay, today on the show we have a Chicago legend, Jeff Proctor, from the Jeff Proctor Group at Properties. Since 2003, Jeff has been working with buyers, sellers, and developments in a wide array of areas within Chicago, the western suburbs, and the North Shore. This has developed Jeff into one of the top agents in Chicago at over 500 million in sales. Jeff has been able to fully advise his clients throughout all real estate matters. Over the past 10 years, Jeff is consistently ranked in the top 1% of Chicago Association of Realtors and produced over 385 million in sales over the past 6 years alone, which is incredible. Patience and a wealth of experience and knowledge in all areas of Chicago real estate have established Jeff as one of the top brokers consultants in the industry. We're so thrilled to have him. By the way, visit Jeff and his group at jproctorgroup.com. That's J, the letter J, proctorgroup.com. Welcome to the show, Jeff Proctor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. We're really thrilled to have you. This is a big deal for us and our listeners as well. And you have a great reputation here in Chicago. We, of course, have listeners nationwide. But for those for all listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with you, can you talk a little bit? I always like to ask this question first, which is, tell us how you got into real estate. What prompted you to get in, and maybe give us that journey.
Yeah, actually, my mother has been in real estate for 30 years, so that certainly has helped. But
Sure.
I was in Chicago. I was working in a corporate job, and I was doing outside sales. And personally, I wasn't overly happy with the income or the potential of income.
Sure.
So I started doing it part-time for about 2 years. Got on my first development back in 2005. And from there on out, we sold 400 units within the first year, opened and closed the doors to the development within 365 days. And from there on out, I just jumped ship, and here we are now.
Yeah, let's. I don't want to gloss over this 400 units in 365 days. That is a big accomplishment.
Huge.
And what, that was in year 2 or so?
That was in year 2. Yeah, correct. Yeah, that was in year 2. Fortunately, Mike Golden and Thad Wong were able to put me on a development. I really appreciate the opportunity. Sure. But we worked with JDL, which is now, the prominent developer in Chicago. It was a condo. It was an apartment conversion to condos, which obviously today in this market, we're doing a lot more condos to apartments, which is funny. But yeah, 400 unit buildings down in Printers Square, Printers Row area. Yeah. And it was quite entertaining, to say the least.
So did you basically live on site for that year?
We lived on site. Yeah. It was, it was one of those things where we opened up doors and we had a line down the street. So it was that time of the market, though, the 2007 market, lending was a lot more flexible, and everybody was looking for investment. So it was a great opportunity. And it kind of it got me in contact, honestly, with like a lot of other brokers. It got me in contact with a lot of lenders. It got me in contact with the whole real estate community. So it started to create those relationships, and, we kind of just kept on exploring from there. Since then, we've done, about 12 other projects in the city of Chicago. So all been great experiences, and love the city. So
do you prefer to work with developers versus, traditional, one-off buyers and sellers? What is it that you find that is the most exciting?
Yeah. Today, I'd say the majority of my stuff is one-off buyers and sellers. Right now, we're working actually on a couple apartment deals, meaning land development, zoning. We put in, we'll do commercial deals, we'll do apartment deals, we'll do retail deals, we'll do land site development, zoning consultation, buyers, sellers, condos, single families. Developments are great. They are. They're few and far between today, because we have so many apartment developments now. So yeah, I love working with developers. I've done custom single family homes, but today, from the condo market perspective, it's a lot of boutique developments. So, there's smaller niche developments. Back in the day when we did larger developments, there are 400 units, 200 units, 300 units, and you had sales centers, you had all these things. Now they're so small that they're by appointment only, right? So you're not opening up to these huge sales centers anymore. And the developments are smaller in nature, smaller land sites. And the larger stuff, as you know, are apartment deals that, tend to get built and resold to another investment group. So the condo development market isn't nearly as prominent as it once was. But yeah, I love the development aspect. I mean, we've worked with clients on custom single family homes in Lincoln Park to boutique, build outs of their own condos on historic buildings. So I just love the whole development process, whether it's a 1923, building or a brand new construction. So.
Yeah, for our listeners who are realtors who are wanting to get more in with developers and be considered for some of these projects, do you have any advice about how somebody who's not who doesn't have your kind of background and experience, maybe how they can start to develop those relationships?
Yeah, I mean, today I'd say I'm at the comfort stage, for the last 5 to 10 years of just picking up the phone and calling, right? I think overall, you have to know your numbers. You have to know the zoning. You have to know your numbers. You have to know the variances. You have to know the FAR for square footage requirements. You have to know how to build, right? You have to know insulation factors, exterior cladding, all sorts of stuff. So you have to know the industry inside and out, because I think you're just kind of spinning your wheels if you're calling these developers asking for a handout and you don't know anything about the development process. So learn the development process, learn zoning, learn construction, how to build right, and then learn interior finishes too. So you can talk and discuss that with developers and obviously go to the potential buyer and sell those features and finishes too. So you have to know the business inside and out. I think it's glamorous to do these developments per se, but once again, if you don't understand the market or the zoning or how to build, you're kind of just at a loss for words.
Yeah, you're not really even going to be considered unless you really, really know your stuff.
No.
And you've built out a team. I'm curious, and again, I'm never sure if you can call it a team anymore or group in Illinois. For our listeners who aren't here, they've changed the rules, so I'm not sure what's the right thing to say. But I know you guys are a group. So can you talk a little bit about when you started to develop your team and how that's worked for you?
Yeah, it's worked out great. It's ever changing because you're hiring in brokers that, obviously they want to progress themselves. So you see people come and go all the time. The ideal situation for me when I started it is just that I got to the point where I just couldn't handle it myself. The day-to-day, we're present for all showings. So, especially on the list side, which is very difficult to do. So it's been great. It's freed up a lot of my time in terms of just day-to-day. It's freed up a lot of admin work. DocuSigns, listing agreements, contracts, paperwork, closing documents, et cetera, to handle the client directly. So it's allowed me to go from, I'd say when I started, I was solo, I was doing 30, 35 million or so. And then we jumped to about 70 plus, with the group. So, and I brought in brokers, that, might be struggling too, maybe a broker that needs a little bit of guidance, needs a little bit of assistance, needs some, some added income to their bottom line because they're just kind of getting started or struggling in the business. So, it's been great. As long as everybody performs, we're all happy. So, but it's been a shifting paradigm in terms of the brokers and the team and everybody that's on there. Unfortunately, we lost a couple of people last week. Which that will shift, but now we're interviewing more people downtown, but everybody's excited. So,
and by the way, if any of our listeners think they might be a match for your group, is it okay if they can reach out
100%.
maybe through your great? What's the best way? Should they visit your website?
Visit my website. You could contact or just, honestly, my cell phone's my office. So, 773-517-6026. It's just text, email, call. Let's just talk direct. So.
Yeah, well, I know if I was producing a realtor and I wanted to learn from someone and join a winning team, certainly you could do much worse than looking at your group.
The spring market's it's gangbusters right now. It's nuts. I mean, the end of last year was a little quiet because we had a lot of macroeconomic things going on, I think. But this spring is, it's 3x in terms of what we saw at the end of last year. So
and rates are down again. Lending rates.
So the jumbo 7-year ARM is 2.75. I just refinanced mine at 3% 3 months ago, and now I'm at 2.75. It's nuts.
That's amazing. We had Joel Schaub from Guaranteed Rate on.
Yeah.
He comes on every month, and he
Mhm.
was this weekend on Friday night. I talked to we recorded an episode on Saturday. I said, "What'd you do last night?" Just because he and I are buddies. And he said, "Oh,
Mhm.
I spent all night emailing everybody who bought a home in the last 2 years,
Oh
telling them
yeah.
they should refinance."
Oh, I mean, sub 3% on a jumbo mortgage is,
Incredible.
I don't know, it's free money.
It,
If you take into account inflation and tax deductions. So it's pretty good opportunity right now.
Oh, I wanted to go back to something you had said, because not every broker, and I think, of course, every broker has an opinion about this, and it's kind of still a hot, somewhat debated topic, which is, should listing agents go to showings? You had mentioned that you and your team go to showings. Do you
Yes.
have a particular opinion about whether they, obviously you feel you should be there?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so here's an interesting, in my opinion, it's a very interesting piece. Is that I moved west with my family for my kids, and I still do a ton of work in the city, but I've naturally picked up business in the western suburbs in the North Shore, and nobody wants to talk to anybody. So it's really weird. But I just don't feel like you get the right marketing, you get the right sales approach if you're just letting people just randomly walk into a property without any guidance, right?
Right.
So we always are there to at least meet and greet and run through the marketing points of the properties, the sales, the statistics, the area details, and just everything about the property. So hopefully the transition is much quicker in terms of a list to sale to closing process. It just benefits. I mean, even like our brochures and all of our notes. So we use like an Evernote system for every property that we use, and everything is encompassed into one document, right? So when that person's leaving the property, they have all the financials, the reserve balance, the condo association information, the details, the years that it was built. Everything you need to know has already been done and communicated to that buyer. The last thing you want to do is see somebody leave and then all of a sudden turn around 2-3 days later and go, "Hey, what was this information?" Right? So we
Sure.
just hand it all to them there. It's part of sales. I mean, you're in a sales position, so
Yeah.
you should be there and be present.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, and then also assuming that the buyer's broker is just going to know everything, and
That's never the case. Unfortunately, it's not. It is the case, but I mean, listen. Everybody tries to get a good start in the business, and maybe they're not fully aware. And I get a lot of brokers. I had a broker literally email me, 30 minutes ago and said, "Hey, I saw you sold this place over there. I'm not familiar with the development. Can you give me some insight?" And I'm like, "Sure, of course." It's a lot to learn, especially in the city of Chicago, because it's a big city, to know everything. So it's a give and take. So yeah, I mean, you got to just be there. You got to be present. So
Well, yeah, it's also a good way to justify your fee to the seller, right? Is I'm showing up.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. Marketing dollars today are far above what we've ever spent in terms of listing properties and clients in general. So we're doing, I have a social media company that I hired in, right? Because that's not my go-to.
Sure.
And so they're handling social media. We do print advertising, we do direct mailers, we do brochures, we do videos, we do photographs, we do drone footage, we do local video footage. I mean, it's the numbers. I mean, we put a ton of marketing dollars out there, and it's great because you just need it. It's about exposure for yourself, but at the same time, exposure for the property. So
Well, that, and probably 99% of realtors don't do all of those things. Of
yeah.
course, they'll probably get professional photos done. That's pretty
Mhm.
much, well, I don't know, that's always a given these days, but
Yeah, yeah.
mostly a given. But other than that, I don't know that most realtors are doing a lot of that, and they should be. But I guess that's one of the things that separates you from other realtors.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So one of the questions we get, because we have a tremendous number of new brokers who listen to our
Hmm.
show, who look at a guy like you and say, "Oh my God, he's already, this wild success, and has been doing, for almost 20 years now."
Hmm.
What advice do you have? Because you do bring on team members, and I don't know how new some of your team members are, but I suspect you see a lot of people who are new to the business. What advice do you have if you were starting out today, being that developments maybe aren't as prominent as they were when you started? What would you do today to get started if you were brand new?
I think with the whole group scenario, that's first and foremost. I would find somebody that you can kind of tag along, and it doesn't need to be part of a full group, to be honest. You could really just tag along and just say, listen, if you need help here, if you need help there, I'd love to jump in. There's times where I need help on a listing, and I'll bring in a broker that is hungry, and I put them on the listing, and I co-listed with them, and they kind of do some of the day-to-day for me, and they're getting the experience that they normally wouldn't get, right? So the problem so that would be one, and then number two is pick up the phone. I mean, you gotta be aggressive, and you gotta call people. So it's not pushing, it's selling yourself, but at the same time, you have to call people. The last thing, I've interviewed people, and people have gotten started the business, and they go, "Oh, I just feel really uncomfortable." I go, "Well, you better get uncomfortable, because it's going to continue to be that way." So, I mean, social media, like I said, is not my forte, but I do look at it every day. And if I see a client or a friend or somebody like that that's looking for real estate or mentions real estate, I'll pick up the phone and just call and say, "Hey, how can I help?" And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, hey, listen, I made a good phone call and I made a good connection.
Yeah, and you did something proactive as a way to add value to that person. It's like, hey, I saw you have a need, and I thought I'd reach out and see if I could be of assistance. It's certainly this is one of those businesses where I think if you're not willing to just go say, I can help you with this, then, and you need to be able to help them with that, right? You have to actually have that skill set. So I think you're right, like joining a group or finding a mentor or somebody you can tag along with and see what does a real listing presentation look like? What does a buyer consultation look like? What's it like to meet at somebody's home and sit across from them at their dining room table and talk about, here's what I'm going to do for you.
Yeah. And that's, with some of the younger guys that we hire in, I kind of curtailed all my marketing, my material. So they're different from, At Properties is a big company. It's a great company, but I kind of took my own listing presentation and put it in my own marketing material.
Sure.
So, and I said to the younger brokers, I said, take all of this and utilize it to your advantage, right? And if you get a call from $1 million person, you freak out and you don't understand where to even start, I'll come in and I'll literally sit down with them and I'll meet with the client and we'll try to just close the deal together. You have to get some guidance, because I'd say a lot of people that get into the business in general, I tell them, you're not making any money for 6 months. So you better start making some calls now. And the people that are 3 months in and go, well, I haven't heard from anybody, that's because you haven't done your job. So even starting out, get all emails, addresses, get their physical address, get their social media accounts, start up your own social media pages, and start communicating as quickly as possible. Because if you just put one blanket post out there and just hope your phone rings, it's not going to happen.
I met with a broker once who was subscribing to the Brian Buffini, the monthly mailing system that he has. He calls it items of value. Anyway, so she was talking with me and she goes, every time I send out these 100 mailers, I get a couple of deals. And she goes, but I don't send out the mailers. And I was like, then hire somebody to send out the mailers.
Yeah, so easy.
Yeah.
That's so easy. And that's a nice part about our company. Actually, it's a agent assist program, which is basically exactly that. So anything I need. So building contacts, addresses, farming buildings, listing agreements, things like that. We have a whole assistant department that really helps out with that. So that's huge, saves a ton of time.
Yeah. I also want to hear about how the market's changed, from the crash through now, what trends you've seen, what you sort of maybe see coming in your best guess, and maybe what advice you have for our listeners who are brokers who are trying to figure out how to adapt and change to it.
Well, it's competitive, right? I mean, once again, let's go back to social media. That social media component has really changed how people market, of course. I think that a lot of people are utilizing that very well, but is everybody so truthful on it? I don't know, but perception is reality, right? So I'd say the market changed. In fact, listen, MLS is certainly not your only portal to get to properties, right? So I'd say all morning, I went to a commercial site called Crexy to find a piece of property. At the same time, I'm looking through LoopNet. At the same time, I'm looking through MLS for residential. At the same time, I'm looking through Top Agent Network, which is exclusive to the downtown market and top to 10% of brokers. And then we're doing, we have our own in-house app. So there are so many different avenues that you can find property, right? That's changing. Everybody used to just sit there and wait for to hit the MLS. And then once you got that little notification on the far right, you were like, oh, you would call your client or send it to them. I would say that 30-40% of the deals I send my clients are not even on the market yet. So that's the big change. And I think that's going to also start to weed out a lot of the brokers that simply can't find things. So, because if you're not looking on the private listing network or the top agent network or off market, you're really kind of missing out and not getting your client what they need ahead of time.
Yeah, if it's just on the MLS, your clients can find that on their own through Zillow, Redfin, a million other websites.
Correct.
Yeah, you have to be able to provide additional value. And there are other networks out there like the private listing network.
Sure, the private listing network. I mean, that was a smart move by the MRED, right? I mean, they had to keep up with the other offline markets, but I mean, you also have to know the market, like we talked about. I mean, I'd say if I get a new buyer in, I'd say, listen, I could send you 100 properties that doesn't do you any good. Why don't I just weed them down to 10 to 15, and these are your top 10 to 15 to start with. So, and that makes it a lot more efficient too, because I'd say a lot of brokers are just going out there, just throwing darts. Hopefully that one of them hits without knowing the buildings, the location, the client requirements, and everything else. Because I see a lot of times where new brokers, unfortunately, but it's a learning process, come in and they'll look at something and the client looks at them and goes, this is absolutely not what I'm looking for. And then they just walk right back out. So it's just being more efficient with your time and your energy and being more focused for what the client needs and know the market. It's good, but that's going to start weeding out a lot of these people, because too many people it's the same thing, right? We went through it in 04 to 07. And then now we're going right back through it again, where the numbers are up to 14, 15, 16, 17,000 agents. So you got to stay competitive. You got to know the market. So.
Yeah, it's funny. When I first started the podcast, there was 42,000 brokers in Chicago, including the suburbs. Now there's 46,000.
46,000, yeah.
Keeps growing. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And I always say, brokers at the very top, the top producing brokers, they're not worried about some of the other companies coming in, offering discount services and pricing, because they know their value, which goes above and beyond what algorithms can do. Especially, there's a lot of emotional value that top producers bring to their clients. But so many brokers never really learn their market, or they never even define their market. And if a broker gets a $3 million listing in Lake Forest and doesn't know Lake Forest, I don't know they should take it. I think maybe it'd be better
No way. Yeah. 100%. I mean, listen, although we try to stretch different areas, we have a broker in each one of those areas, right? So Smart. You're utilizing me from a marketing standpoint, a digital media standpoint, and everything else, but there is a local broker representing you. And if I don't have a local broker, I have no problems referring that deal out, right? I mean, it's just not, Naperville would be a perfect market for that. Unfortunately, I just don't know Naperville as well as I should, and I don't have a broker there. So for me, it's like, I'd love to work there, but the transportation for me to get there from the city is impossible, and I don't know the market. So why don't we find somebody local and give your client the service they deserve, instead of try to chase a deal down because of a commission.
Yeah, boy, I think that couldn't be better said. And for new brokers, don't be afraid to refer out. I mean, you always, you still earn a referral commission, and you don't look stupid when it's, because you can pretend that you know things for a while, but eventually that becomes pretty evident when you're not able to really give value. But
stay involved, right? See where you can help. I mean, you're referring out the business doesn't mean it ends there. It's obviously your client. It's probably a friend or an acquaintance of yours. So stay involved and see if, make sure the deal's being handled appropriately. So just because you don't know the area doesn't mean you have to handle it, 100%. So refer it out, but stay in touch, because that'll go a long way.
Yeah. And I also just wanted to ask, because you've been in business for so long, and I'm curious to know, in between sales, I always think that, at the firm I'm at, we have hundreds and hundreds of brokers too. And I suspect, even though I think they're quite good, I suspect they could always do a better job of staying in touch after the sale. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what your group does just to keep conversation going? Homeowner moves in or sells. What do you guys do to make sure they don't forget about you?
I'd say, just in general, I mean, I'm more of, I wouldn't say reactionary, but I am. I mean, if I'm in a specific area where I know my client had bought, a year or so ago, and I see something pop up, I'll be like, hey, take a look. This is a pretty good number for the area. Very casual conversations. We keep them in our CRM database. They keep getting updates. They keep getting mailers. They keep getting all the marketing materials that we're sending them. So, and at the same time, make sure if you have any questions, reach out at any point, right?
Right.
So we're just always open. Like my cell phone, like I said, is my office. So you can text me, call me, email me, and it's a pretty quick response overall. So it's just that constant contact of just, listen, if I know I'm in the area of somebody, or I know somebody was looking at something in some area. One funny story is that we looked at a house that was great on the inside, but hideous on the outside, right, with the client. And it's still this ongoing joke where I just keep sending them pictures of the hideous houses that I but they've already been bought, and they still, they love their new place, and it's great. But it's just constant. You got to keep your doors open at all times. So you just got to make sure that they're more than welcome to reach out to you, but at the same time, touch base with them every once in a while.
Yeah, and Jeff just said a lot right there, right? He has systems in place. He has a CRM, he has mailers, he has newsletters, he has all sorts of touches that are constantly going out. And then once in a while, if he sees something that he thinks would be interesting to that individual value-wise, he'll shoot it over to them. And it seems so obvious, of course, that everyone should have systems, but you have to have systems to automate a lot of this.
Yeah, you have to. And one of and I bet you there's probably 5,000 plus people that we have. And that's accumulating addresses, physical addresses from like 03 to today. Right. So, I mean, and you just keep updating those, every 6 months, and you make sure that you're getting the right address. And it's always, that gives you a really good opportunity to reach out to your client too, because you're saying, hey, John, it looks like I got an old address for you. What's your updated address? Hope all's well. And that's, just keep going from there. So you just got to keep updating it. If you don't start that process early and get that list at least started, you're well behind the 8 ball. You're just not going to catch up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, brokers can do that immediately, right? Even if you're years behind, call every single person in your database or hire someone to do it and get that updated information. Find out as much information as you can so that you can find out other reasons to contact that person. Maybe
100%.
Yeah, if you've I always say the more data you have on your clients, the more outreach you can do. And so awesome. So real quickly too, because in case we have listeners here who are joining us towards the latter part of the show, Jeff, his team is always looking for brokers to add, and very specific type of broker they're looking for. So Jeff, and also, by the way, it's probably a good place to wrap up, because we have a lot of people who listen who may be clients or looking or buyers, sellers, investors, renters who may be looking to work with a top producer. Maybe they're not satisfied with their agent they've used in the past, or maybe they've never used an agent. But if you're a broker who wants to join a team like Jeff's, or you're just an individual who's looking for a great broker, can you give your cell phone one more time?
Yeah, it's 773-517-6026.
And also you can visit Jeff on his website, which is jproctorgroup.com. Again, jproctorgroup.com. And Jeff, do you mind also giving your email address in case someone wants to email you?
It's Jeff Proctor, JEFFPROCTOR at AT Properties. So it's at Properties, Jeff Proctor at atproperties.com.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, you've provided a tremendous amount of value in this episode to our listeners.
Thank you.
I suspect this will become one of our most listened to episodes we've done. This will be a number 130 or 131. So
that's
we
awesome.
could not. Yeah, no, thank you. It's all because of top producers like yourself who take time out of their incredibly busy day to provide value to our listeners. And we really, on behalf of our listeners, we appreciate you and thank you for doing this. And also on behalf of Jeff and myself, to our listeners, of course, we want to say thank you for continuing to listen and support the show. Please visit us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/keeping it real pod. Every single day we find an article online that is designed to help realtors grow their business in some way. We post that.
Mhm.
Also, of course, posting episodes like the one you're listening or watching right now on Facebook. And we can always, it's always just a great place to have a conversation as well for best practices. So please do
Great.
that. And lastly, if for our listeners, if you know anyone who's a broker, a realtor, real estate agent, depending on where you live in the country, what they're called, if you know somebody else that might benefit from listening or
Sure.
watching to episodes like this, please pass it along. Jeff, again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
And have a great 2020. Although I probably don't need to say that because I'm sure you're already having one. But keep up, obviously, the great work, and thanks for being part of the show.
Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. Great show.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.